All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to be in the 147-pound division where Errol Spence Jr., I've been told, take it for what it's worth, is most definitely going to get that Terence Crawford rematch, and that the issue is not what people think it is with the fight being made. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to be in the 147, 154-pound division where there are talks out there about Terence Crawford fighting a variety of people not named Errol Spence Jr. You have Terence Crawford, Keith Thurman, Terence Crawford, Tim Tszyu, and a question of whether or not Terence Crawford is out of his contract to fight Errol Spence Jr. Now, before I get into the details of it, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, please accept my invitation to hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you can be notified of when we release more videos. And if you're a longtime subscriber and supporter of the channel, thank you so much for your continued support. It really makes a huge difference to the channel. And thank you to everybody that supports and the super thanks. But let's get into this because I asked some people some questions, reasonably good sources. I wouldn't say take what they say with a, as gold. However, they said this is what they think the situation is, and I will share it with you about the Errol Spence Terence Crawford rematch, and it is not quite what people are saying. At least this is what the impression is. Now, Terence Crawford had a rematch clause with Errol Spence Jr. for a fight at a weight that would be chosen by either by Terence Crawford at either 154 or 147, or at least that's how that particular term was represented to people by the media. At the end of last year, though, Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr., the network that fight was going to be on went out of business, Showtime. So what happened was that the fight could not be made at the end of the year because which was the time limit for the fight. That means that the fight could not have taken place before the end of that particular contract, right? According to the sources that were out there, the rematch again was supposed to be the loser exercises the rematch clause. Errol exercised the rematch clause, even though Terence Crawford had early on made the argument that Errol Spence Jr. did not do that in writing. Well, wound up that he did do it in writing. And then the next step was, what weight class is it going to be in? I do not know whether or not that ever got settled. It doesn't seem like it did. However, there was also supposed to be a portion about when the date of the fight needed to be by the end of the year. It needed to take place by the end of the year. The problem is, though, that neither party was able to satisfy that particular term to the agreement because Showtime Boxing, and that was something was not in control of either party, was unable to actually air the fight because their parent company, Paramount Plus, ended their relationship ended their boxing program. As a result of that, they were not able to, and the turmoil associated with that, they were not able to have it by the end of the year. Therefore, now as they go into this year, there's a question about whether or not that rematch clause is still valid. Now, my understanding is that Errol Spence Jr. wants that fight, and that there are several areas of issues that can be contested in that particular contract. Number one is, what's the real definition of the weight that takes place? And also, what is the whether the contract is expired or not? However, this is not something that people want to go to court about. So there's discussions going on about what is going to take place. Now, Errol Spence Jr. had said out in the media what his practices were. What his issues were heading into that last fight. Terence Crawford responds with, well, man, basically saying that he can't believe that he's hearing this, and what a bad, implying that's a bunch of excuses, but they're really glad that they're past it. Errol Spence says, man, come on, man, get out of your feeling. Let's run it back. So Errol is wanting it. Terence is wanting it, but Terence is now looking for other options. Now, the people that talk to me this is what they believe the case is, that Terence Crawford is going to go through several options, and those several options are going to leave. That they are going to wind up not panning out. The Canelo Alvarez fight is not going to pan out for Terence Crawford. That the Tim Tszyu fight, which is can very much be affected by people associated with Errol Spence Jr.'s camp, because Tim Tszyu is a PBC fighter, will be affected. Will affect his opportunity to get that fight, and that the other major promoters do not have a really big interest in Terence Crawford, but Terence Crawford is going to have to actually go through all of the options and all of the things that he has to wind up back at square one, realizing that his big payday is against Errol Spence Jr. Now, what is this, and why is this? Because you wind up they remember the situation that took place last time, where Errol Spence was right up front and was really pushing the envelope to get the fight with Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford wound up negotiating with somebody else, dropping out and going to fight somebody else. And at this time, they do not want to do that. They're not going to push it so heavily as to go to court with them or to try to force them and spend a bunch of money around that. They believe that Terence Crawford is going to inevitably come back around to what his big payday is, because Canelo is not realistic. Tim Tszyu is something that is probably not as lucrative as he thinks and may not be as available as he thinks. And he doesn't have those other options, all of the options that he thinks, and he's not going to wind up going into retirement. So Errol Spence Jr., who needs to heal from his cataract surgery, and obviously now has time to heal from his cataract surgery because of the fact that this negotiation or process is going to get stretched out, is not going to happen immediately. That's where we're at, and that's the thought process going on between the teams. And when I was presented with this in a fairly detailed conversation with somebody that is fairly close to it, and when I'm saying fairly, I mean as fairly as you are going to get, because you're not going to be talking to Al Heyman directly about what his thought processes are and where the Amazon Prime thing is. And it's not any particular boxing person or anybody else that you would think I may get this information from. It's somebody that is within the entertainment industry that pays attention to it and knows certain people involved and is saying this is what they think that the situation is. So when people ask me, that's my answer. Deuces.